Hello and welcome to Hawks podcast. I'm your co-host Tyler, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Matt. And we played some teams from New Jersey this week. Um, one of us won, one of us didn't, but both of us played bad football on offense. One of us played really well on defense, but we would not recommend watching any of these game highlights. They weren't very exciting.
Unless you like seeing 101-yard touchdowns.
Or Andrew Van Ginkel's second pick six of the season,
But
or
after
Aaron Rodgers throwing three interceptions.
that's it.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, the Thursday night game finally was good. I don't
For
even
now.
care that we had to change our power rankings because Atlanta won. The game was good. Kudos to, them for keeping it close, but the Buccaneers had no chance going into that game with the amount of injuries they had defensively, and then they just kept ramping up during the game. People kept leaving for different injury purposes, and that middle of the field was always open, and Kirk Cousins took advantage. Pretty much all of his passes were to wide receivers on crossing routes, who just turned into big gains because the linebackers were out. So, I mean, Tampa Bay just needs to get healthy, and I think they'll go back to being the front runners. But for now, Atlanta has a chance to get a lead until Tampa Bay can get healthy.
Yeah. Not much to really say about this game. Do you want to go into the questions now?
I thought the question. Oh, that yeah, that's right. Thought it was this one or the reactions one rather, or the prediction the no power rankings. But yeah, all right. Interesting questions. You may remember Matt doing this on a different video, but it is now my turn to ask some questions post week 5. So, Matt, true or false? Is the NFC North the best division in football?
Yeah.
We all of our teams are above 500.
Let me look at the divisions real quick. I'd have to say true right now. We'll see how the Bears turn out, and we'll see how the Packers turn out. They didn't look great in against a win against the Rams. That the Rams were decimated from injuries, so we'll see how those teams do. Detroit and Minnesota are good so far this year. NFC West is usually the bookmark of tough divisions, but both the Rams and 49ers are injured to hell. Seattle's been dealing with issues, and the Cardinals have been up and down week to week, except just mostly division games, which is the only two games they've won so far. Um, AFC East is struggling. I guess we'll talk about Salah getting fired at some point. Um, AFC North, since he's 1-4, Cleveland sucks. Pittsburgh had a chance to actually prove that they weren't frauds on Sunday night, weren't able to get it done. You had it fourth and goal with Dak, and you couldn't stop him. Um, AFC West is just KC right now. Denver's starting to get some momentum going, but we'll see how long that lasts. And NFC East, they're up and down right now. So
Yeah, well, you're getting into my other question. Is the AFC South or the AFC East the worst division in football? Because I think it's one of those two.
that's tough.
Because you've got the Texans and the Bills at the top, and then everyone else is kind of just there.
Because I'd say the NFC South is a part of that too. But between those two, I'm gonna have to go with the AFC East. We don't know if Tua is coming back. The Jets are in disarray. New England is struggling to find a pulse. Drake May will be starting this weekend against the Texans. Not a great time to start him, but Coach Mayo, you do what you do. Buffalo, they started out to a really hot start, and then the past 2 weeks have just not looked good from getting their tails kicked by the Ravens, and then just I don't know what that play calling was at the end of the fourth quarter against the Texans, but right now all those teams have issues and questions. AFC South, Tennessee's had ups and downs. Um, with their one win being against Miami. Colts 2-3, they've been up and down. And then you have Houston 4-1. So
Yeah, I think the South edges it out a little bit just because of their potential. I think
yeah,
we've kind of seen everything else from the East, so I'd agree. Um, just for the our listeners out there, I think the questions will take the majority of the time for this segment because I mean we're gonna very quickly go through each game before ours, which will obviously take a lot. So we will try and put a timestamp for the rest of the game reactions since we've only done Tampa Bay and Atlanta so far. We'll try and find that, pin it in a comment for you all. But with that, I'll continue on with questions just so everybody knows what's going on. So the Commanders, do you think they're a legitimate playoff team, or do you think they're simply a result of playing mid at best competition?
well, we saw them go against the Bengals, and the Cincinnati defense was not able to handle them. They couldn't handle the Ravens offense, but there we've seen enough games consecutively that I feel like Washington is going to be a contender to get to the playoffs. Now, Super Bowl contender, that might be a little far, but it'll be interesting to see how Washington does against the Eagles and Cowboys, which they sometimes have struggles with. So, but Jaden Daniels has looked great so far, easily offensive rookie of the year favorite right now. No, we've said this week to week to week, but just can't be beat when all the other quarterbacks aren't playing up to that same level that he is right now. He's
Right.
playing great. So
Speaking of quarterback play, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
you're good. Go.
Speaking of quarterback play and the NFC East, with the Eagles coming off their bye week and having time to figure out their offense, do you think they're the ones who could potentially knock off Washington for the division title?
Right now, I'd have to say I have more confidence with Dallas just because of the pieces that they can get back. Um, Looking at the Eagles right now, they have problems across the board. And it's not just from injuries, where now Dallas also needs to learn how to stop the run and be physical. We don't know if they can yet, but the Eagles is a lot more internal issues, at least regular season wise, than Dallas, which is just the talent, which they still have a lot of stars on that team, pun intended. So right now I have to say Dallas just because I'm not confident if the Eagles with adversity can handle it or can handle adversity basically.
I mean, they've beaten quality. I mean, I think they beat the Packers and they beat the Saints, which the Saints aren't looking as good right now, but that's 5 wins combined out of their 4 games. For their quality of opponents that they've beaten. They lost the Falcons, who are looking good now, and they lost to the Buccaneers, who are also good. So I mean, if they stumbled out of the gate, they also had to deal without AJ Brown for 2 of those games and without Devontae Smith for 1.5. So getting those pieces back and then having a bye week to reevaluate everything.
Here's the thing, Tyler. They had those pieces at the end of last year when they completely collapsed.
This is true, but you still got chances to get it together. Could be an issue of play calling that you figure out, trying to get
Until they
everybody on the same
do,
page.
I
But
can't trust them.
yeah, I think I would trust the Eagles more than the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys have one more game. They've been able to play one more game, so that's part of the reason. Um, I think the Eagles just have more pieces there, and I think I trust them to bounce back more regular season wise. Again, postseason is a different animal, but. I just don't see the Cowboys being able to make it in those big games. And, it's just, but for now, it's Washington. We'll have to see Washington against good opponents. They play the Ravens in Baltimore this week, so that'll be a really good test for them. With how the Baltimore Ravens handle Cincinnati this week, that might be a very high scoring affair. Or that's just division weirdness. So we'll have to see what happens. But if Washington can beat Baltimore, I think they're going to be a top five team in the league
Yeah.
very easily. Um, so that's definitely the case there. But I just wanted to see who you thought would be able to challenge them, if anyone. So next one with the Jets' new GM and Aaron Rodgers, do you think this team is going to free fall? They had a top five defense under Saleh, but now he's gone, and the offense has been looking brutal for the past few years. But that's not really Saleh's fault. So can Aaron Rodgers get this team to win or not?
It really depends on who they either bring in as a coach mid-year, which that's going to be pretty much impossible. It all really depends on how probably interim coach how they corral around them. This is really early in the year for what was supposed to be a team all in this year. They're going for a Super Bowl or bust to be firing their coach this early in the season. So,
And they're only one. We were talking about this earlier. They're only one game behind in the
yeah.
division.
And they face
It
Buffalo
made no
this week
sense.
to take the lead in the division.
Yep.
The only thing I can understand is they don't feel like Salah is leading this team correctly. Um, there was the one after the touchdown where Aaron Rodgers basically pushed Salah. Um, it was the whole thing of Salah's not really a hugger, so Rodgers wasn't expecting it. So Rodgers was doing the thing that Salah normally does. We've seen other issues. It just never felt like the chemistry was ever there. And we saw that in the pre or in training camp where Salah was basically having to be the puppet to Rodgers when Rodgers was who knows where. So one of those things of sucks to see for Salah. Hopefully he can get another chance somewhere. Probably be best to go to something like DC, defensive coordinator, not Washington, but we'll see what happens with
Well,
him.
I don't know. Washington could use him. I think if they can get a top defense to go along with that offense, man, they'd be contenders right away.
I just don't think
Uh,
Washington has the pieces on defense. Now, if you could get some pieces in there with Dan Quinn and Salah leading that defense,
yeah. I will say St. Juice, one of the most underrated corners in the NFL. He is very good. So they have some pieces, but they did trade away a lot of them last year. So
imagine if
definitely
that
interesting there.
defense in this team right now still had like pieces like Chase Young and others. Um, Washington could be seen as like an actual playoff contender right now because a lot of the questions have been about their defense, which is held up so far, but we'll see what happens with Washington.
Yep. All right. I will say I got a good amount of questions, so I'm trying to get through these quickly.
We'll speed
I
run
don't
these.
think you know quite. I don't think you know just how many I wrote. So besides the Commanders, what's one team that's exceeding your expectations this year
Gotta
so
say
far through
Denver.
5 games?
I gotta say Denver right now. They started out the gate really slow, but now that they're 3-2, um, doing a lot better than I expected.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth with this one honestly, and since you said Denver, I'm gonna actually go with the Giants. And the reason I say that is because we all expected, oh, Daniel Jones is back. He's gonna, crap the bed and everything, and that defense is gonna get exposed. Their defense has been very good in each game. And, if they actually decided to, kick points against Washington, they'd be 3-2,
Well, they
and
couldn't.
they'd have the division lead. Um, and I mean, now they seem to have figured it out, passing and running wise. I don't think Singletary was ever the answer. I think that Tracy Jr. should be involved a lot more in the rushing attack because I don't seen much from Singletary at all. This year when he was healthy, even at the end of last year, when he was with Buffalo, right?
Well, the thing with
Um,
New York in the Washington game, they didn't have a healthy kicker on the roster, so they couldn't kick points.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they had a kicker that game, they would have beaten Washington. They'd be 3-2, and we'd be talking about a different Giants and Washington team theoretically than right now. But um, but yeah, I'm gonna go with them just because I mean you took Denver already, and I mean we expected Houston to be good, so I can't really say them. Buffalo just disappointed us a little bit. You know, everybody, I mean, Chicago, I mean, everybody was expecting them to be good though. So it's kind of like who else is impressing that we didn't think would be good. So I kind of have to go with the Giants there.
I thought you wanted to rapid
Um,
fire.
yeah, yeah, sorry. Um, I do. Okay, so go put that on its head. What's disappointing you besides the Jags and the Bengals?
Disappointing. That's I have to say, did you say Cincinnati as well in that?
Yeah, you can't pick the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Bengals.
I'm gonna have to go with Cleveland then. I know they haven't had Nick Chubb, but that defense should be a lot better than it is. And Deshaun Watson has completely fallen off the map. Jameis Winston, it's time to come in, brother. Um, the coach doesn't even fully trust the quarterback right now. He's basically just having to be puppeted by the owner and GM who paid Deshaun Watson all that money. Y'all be doing way better with Baker Mayfield right now. One of those things, Cleveland's just fallen out of the gate, and I think we're getting to the point where it's already too late 5 weeks in the season.
There we go. I would go San Fran or the Rams if there weren't so many injuries to cause it, but I'm gonna go with the Colts just because we expected Anthony Richardson to come in and light it up, and make them contenders. But that partner with the fact of their terrible run defense, they've just not been able to hang in there with games and win out those tough games, even with Joe Flacco at the helm this week. Now it is them not winning in Jacksonville since 2014, but still very disappointing as of now, but maybe Flacco can keep them in it if Richardson stays out. But that's really the question. Who is the most fraudulent winning team in each conference?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna have to say Pittsburgh for the AFC. We've seen them face. I wouldn't even say the Colts were a quality opponent, and then Dallas. Um, for a team that we thought defense would carry them for the year, that defense has come back down to earth and crashed even lower to 6 feet under. Um, Justin Fields actually isn't playing that bad. It's just that defense can't get a stop right now. They couldn't stop Joe Flacco. They couldn't stop Dak Prescott when it counted. And you got to help your offense out at some point when that's not a high powered offense. Um, NFC, I feel like you're doing this to me on purpose. I have to say Seattle. Um, just lost the
I mean,
Giants. Haven't
I
been
could
in,
put the caveat that there's can't pick our teams if you want.
well, there's nobody else. Unless I say Tampa Bay, which that's not true. Falcons have had some quality wins. Detroit, they haven't really had any. They didn't have or the Buccaneers loss wasn't bad. Um, Unless you want to say Vikings. Dallas just came off of winning against the Steelers against that defense, and Washington. You and me both think they're legit right now. So
Yeah.
last one left, Seattle. They haven't beaten a quality opponent. Should have been a bounce back game on Sunday, and got basically beat out the whole game, outcoached, outplayed, out offense, out defense, out special teams. What else can you say? They have a chance on Thursday. I don't think they have a chance, but we'll get into that when we get to the predictions.
Right. And if it makes you feel any better, Matt did tell me to write the questions on Friday. That was one that I did write on Friday because it's pretty easy to write that without knowing what goes on. So that was not actually to get a jab at you. It's just one that I left in there because it still makes sense. For me, I think since you took Pittsburgh and Seattle off the board, I'm going to go Dallas with the NFC. I just don't think their winning is sustainable. I think that they need to face more quality opponents. Like you said, Pittsburgh has not really beaten that good of competition, and they haven't really gotten both sides of the ball together. So I'd have to say Dallas. And then for the AFC, I'm going to say Buffalo. It's kind of the same lines with our other picks. They've not beaten that good of teams either. Um, and they've lost to the two good teams they have played. So, I mean, you're starting to see the decline. And it's funny, Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Buffalo are three previously 3-0 teams. They've all lost two straight. So, um, Pittsburgh and Buffalo have to kind of be on there for me. I hope you guys bounce back, but I mean, I'm not going to argue. I think those four teams are pretty much the ones I would say are on alert. Um, so next up, the one of the big questions floating around out there, where does Devonte Adams go?
You want a hypothetical answer, or do you want a real answer?
Only real. We can speed it up. All, real answers from this moment forward.
KC.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that's where he goes, and I think that they get better compensation. If they don't, the Raiders are just they're done.
Hypothetically, I was
Throw
going
in
to
the
say the
towel.
Jets, where Aaron Rodgers basically uh, force arms the Jets organization to get him, but right now I see KC getting him,
Yeah.
and the rest of the league is screwed as Patrick Mahomes goes to three straight Super Bowls. But yeah,
Right. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the GM, so he could do it. But I'll say surprise pick could be Baltimore. They could use a receiver, and I'm if I'm not mistaken, I think they have the cap to get somebody before the deadline.
for
So
some reason
that
they
could
had
be a dark
Seattle
horse.
as a betting option.
Really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
they're in like the top five bets.
With you already having three good receivers, that I don't really know if I agree with that,
I
but
don't know who
hey.
was putting money on them, but whatever.
I wouldn't. Baltimore, on the other hand, though, you got Zay Flowers, and I mean, do you really trust their other receivers after that? So, I mean, I think that could be a sneaky pick there. Anyway, let's see. I'm gonna skip that question because that's not really relevant. That one's not relevant either. I think we both agree Daniels is the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Are the Steelers still contenders?
No,
All right. If you're the
until
Bengals at the yeah.
until that defense can shows any sort of corrections or being able to actually start stopping good offenses again. I just don't think that offense has the ability to get in a shootout and be able to win. And it doesn't help that TJ Watt is trying to be a one man wrecking crew all by himself, that he needs help. So, yeah, Pittsburgh, not a contender, but they can get back to that status if they get things straightened up, which possibility of Russell being back by this Sunday. So we'll see.
Right. So support it when you see it. I can understand that. I'll answer this question first and then you can. If you're the Bengals at the end of the season, are you paying Chase the record-breaking contract that he wants, or do you
Uh,
tag and trade him? I've been very open about the fact that I think Jamar Chase is the next Antonio Brown before the CTE kicks in. I think he's a diva, or the next Diggs, maybe, if you want to go that route.
that's better.
He's
We'll
a
go that route.
He's a diva. He's pretty much in it for the money at this point. He's complaining. He's talking smack when they haven't done anything because he's the main guy who's doing that for the Bengals and they're jumping on board with him. Personally, I tag and trade him. I think he's a cancer in the locker room. I think he's, just too much about himself and wants to be the best at everything, but can't really back it up. He did a great job against Baltimore, but he can't sustainably seem to put out that production. And, him wanting a record breaking contract after Jefferson just got his the same year after being a year behind him, I don't think it makes any sense. So,
Normally, if the Bengals had any other record than 1-4, I'd say the Bengals front office would probably sign him just because they're not going to be able to keep T. Higgins. So he's probably gone. They already lost Tyler Boyd last offseason, so it would just be down to Jamar Chase. But right now, with them being 1-4, if things keep going the way they are, which other than the Panthers game, we don't have any evidence that this will get better. Usually by this
yeah,
time, we would see Cincinnati around 500 or even above 500 already. Not the case this year. So if they go into the tank, I could see a sign and trade for Jamar Chase just to get draft capital to bring some more pieces in with that probably at this point top 10 draft pick.
gotcha. Um, and all right, I'll save those two questions for later. So let's move on to some rapid fire reactions. No one's really surprised that Chicago beat Carolina. Baltimore Cincinnati game of the week for sure. Then we get followed up by the Battle of Trash. Um, Jaden Daniels continues making his case. Stop me if you have anything else to say. I think I'm hitting the nail on the head. Jacksonville continues their streak against the Colts at home since
Finally,
2014. And gets their first win. Um, Houston, Buffalo played a close game, but Houston pulls it out. CJ Stroud is starting to have the athletic abilities of prime Watson. Let's hope he doesn't get the other abilities of Watson. Um,
as I said
Denver,
about Buffalo's coaching decisions in the final 2 minutes, stupid.
terrible.
What are you doing? Go to overtime. Moving on.
Exactly. Three straight passes. Like, my gosh. Um, Denver broke a streak against the Raiders. Raiders has beaten them for several games, I believe. Um,
Yeah, Vegas is
so
lost
good
right
for
now.
them.
They started off that game decently. Then Patrick Surtain had like the 100-yard pick six. Everything fell apart from there.
Yep. San Fran proved to us how valuable a kicker is after the Giants did it a few weeks ago. Um, Green Bay barely survives the Rams. Um, Personally, I was rooting for the Rams, and I know you were rooting for Green Bay, so that was the battle of our arch rivals. Um,
5 picks in 5 games. Xavier
what?
McKinney.
Oh yeah, and the forced fumble last week or this week rather. Um, so yeah, definitely a good acquisition for them, which I hate, but we beat them
Could be
once.
a
Just gotta do it again.
sneaky defensive player of the year if he keeps going at this right now. That's probably going to be impossible. But if he has like 17 picks by the end of the season, I could see it.
See, he's got to turn them into touchdowns though, because here's an interesting stat that I was going to ask you about. Who would have thought that Andrew Van Ginkel would have more receiving touchdowns than Tyreek Hill at this point in the year?
Hmm. Well, Tua was only
Along with a
there
lot of
for
other
what, three
players.
games? Two
Huh?
games? Tua was there for what, 3 games? No, two games.
Andrew Van Ginkel has two pick sixes.
Well, Tua was only there for 2 games.
Right. Yeah, correct. But yeah, there's a lot of other players you can say that about too. But I just picked Tyreek Hill out of it because he was like runner up for, or he was like supposed to be offensive rookie of the year or rookie offensive player of the
Rookie,
year last year.
rookie.
Um, Dallas at Pittsburgh, battle of are they
Yawn.
good? Question mark. And then Kansas City. I mean, staying undefeated. New Orleans 3-game losing streak.
Carr,
I
we'll
think.
see how that injury turns out, but that could be New Orleans. Your season was starting to tank after 2 great wins.
Yeah.
That could be a early end of the season if Carr is out for an extended period of time because I don't think you have the ability to win without Carr.
There we go. Um, all right, very quickly for our games because it's been a long video. Sorry, that's my fault. Um, ugly game in London. I know part of that was because of the rain as well. So you had some sloppy throws towards the end, but both quarterbacks took big hits in this game. Sam Darnold was never really the same after taking a huge shot to the ribs. But when we needed him most, he led us on that drive to get our last field goal to make them have to get a touchdown. Gilmore calls game. Really just a tale of our defense just kicking ass, putting Rodgers in a blender the entire game. Harrison Smith got to sack him, as we saw in the first picture of our podcast. An old friend comes to say hi, is what the announcer called, which I love. Then after the sack, he proceeds to walk away and mock Aaron Rodgers' belt, which he would do whenever he'd get a touchdown against the Bears. Love to see that. Harrison Smith is one of those guys that I've always been telling Matt. He never really talks, and if you listen to him on the media, he's a man of few words. But when he actually does talk or have any sort of personality to his game, he is such a troll, and he is very funny. Love having him there. And Rodgers was sacked 3 times, threw 3 picks, one of them for 6 from Andrew Van Ginkel. Second time he's done it, and basically the same play that Daniel Jones threw in week 1. Just we've got some smart football players on this team, and we're stealing the ball. Like, yes, we're allowing tons of pass yards, but that's because we're forcing you to pass the ball. We are eliminating the run game by how we're playing our defense. Like, if you look at each game statistically, our opponents do not try to run the ball against us. They have like 15 or less rushing attempts the entire game. It is it is insane.
Okay,
And then when
whoa,
we
whoa, whoa,
force
whoa,
them,
whoa, 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 whoa. Here's the issue. It's not that people can't run against your defense, which we'll see if you ever get in a close game. It's because you get ahead so early, they can't run the football. They can't waste that time. So they have to pass it every single down. So that's probably the reason why you have so many passing yards on you, is because you have so many drives in the second half where they're just trying to pass the ball around and you're just in prevent defense not letting anything big. So they're getting five, six,
yeah,
4, 5. So
that's
they're not
that's a
running the
big
ball.
reason of it. But when they start to get the run game going in the early goings, we stop them. Like we start the game selling out to stop the run. And then as we get our lead, because our defense can turn the ball over and get stops, they have no choice but to pass the ball. A big thing going into this season, I was always talking about, like, are we going to be able to stop the run? Our interior defensive line is one of our biggest weaknesses. We haven't had to worry about it too much because our defense has been able to bring in extra linebackers, swap out the D line, and make them have to pass the ball because we'll stack the box. So they don't want to run into all of our guys, and that's part of the reason they haven't found success when they do it. So they open the ball up because our defense gives them the passing option, and that's when it opens up for us to get our sacks, which we're like I think second in the league in now. Um, we used to be first, and I think we're somewhere near the top in takeaways as well. Um, but that's exactly what this defense is designed to do. It's confuse the quarterback and get to him. So. I mean, I don't. We'll see how it goes. If teams actually try to run on us, I think our defensive line actually has improved because, like I said, when they have tried, they aren't very successful. Even in the second half. But I mean, gotta love this defense, and Sam Darnold can make the plays when he needs to. Big question now is just, are we going to go get another running back with Aaron Jones being week to week? Ty Chandler's a very shifty, elusive back with a pass catching ability, but I think we lack that being able to punch it in for 1 or 2 yards type of back when we need a 3rd and 2 converted. So that'll be interesting to see what we do. But without that, or with that done, let's go to your game.
There's only 4 statistics I want to say, /5. So the final score this year was 29-20, Giants winning. Score of last year 24 to 3, Seattle winning. Last year, Gino had 2 sacks, no interceptions. Um, Daniel Jones had 2 picks and was sacked 10 times. Paris Campbell got sacked once. Um, this year, Daniel Jones, 0 INTs, only 3 sacks. That's a little less. Geno Smith, 7 sacks for 53 yards.
Dexter Lawrence introduced himself in a big way.
Um, yeah, our ground game absolutely sucked. Walker and Charbonnet only had 30 yards after Walker had 3 TDs against the Lions defense last week. We had 284 passing yards, which that was just because we were down basically the whole damn game. Offense couldn't get anything going in the first half. The Giants were just going up and down the field all they wanted. The only thing that was saving us was the 100-yard fumble return, which I think that should have been a Giants touchdown, but whatever. Um, then we have a chance to take the lead. We're in Giants territory with like a minute 40, a minute 30 left. The drive completely stalls for no reason, and we go for a field goal. McDonald says that we weren't doing the right technique. They just come in, block it, take it for a touchdown. That's basically it. So, yeah, that all I got to say.
I will say I don't know if this is on the podcast for week one, but I remember saying that if we lose, like really hope we don't lose to the Giants. And you said I'm gonna laugh my ass off if you guys lose to the Giants. And I'm like, they've got some sneaky good receivers, and you're like, they've got Malik Neighbors, who's a rookie. And I'm like, but I believe in Wandale Robinson. You're like, okay, sure, but I'm not scared of was it Hyatt, right? Again, I'm not making fun of the loss. I'm just saying, like, I think you jinxed yourself, um, whenever you said that. So you're very lucky that I gave you a reprieve for this week. That I would not make fun of you if you lost this game. Um, but speaking of Dexter Lawrence, though, there's a lot of talks that come trade deadline, the Vikings should be all in on someone, and a lot of names that pop up is Dexter Lawrence. If we are able to sign him, I don't care what happens in the game that week. All three of my pictures will be Dexter Lawrence. I that would make our defense even better and borderline championship level because that is a man that can stop the run by himself and get to the quarterback on the interior. So that's like Matt, name me a defensive tackle better than Chris Jones and Dexter Lawrence, who's playing currently.
No comment.
Right. There is none. If we can get Dexter Lawrence, I will be very happy. But for right now, it's just speculation. We'll have to wait for the trade deadline to come around. But um anyway, that'll be it. Stay tuned for our power rankings video and our predictions video coming out later this week. We will not have one for the Vikings because we will be on our bye week. But everything else should stay as normal. Thanks, guys.
Peace.